and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Good Trouble. I'm your host, Gregory Ball, and we want to say thank you to our friends from NBC 10 for hosting us again. They always lay out the red carpet and allow us to come over and hang out here and have some good conversation about the things that are going on in the world. And today, my guest is somebody I see frequently on a pretty regular basis. I am sitting today with Elizabeth Tiblanc, the Vice President of Arts and Culture for Embrace Boston. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you. Honored to be here. Honored to be here.
So Elizabeth is nervous. I'm going to just tell this out here right now because I don't know, she thought I was going to do some 60 Minutes type interview where I was going to be like, where were you on the night of December 15th?
Listen.
But that is not the energy that we're here today. We're here to talk about something that's super special that you have been working on for a while. The anniversary rally for the 1965 Freedom Rally that happened so many years ago on Boston Common. And, you know, this is a project that has been in the works for a while to commemorate this. Tell us a little bit about the whole day and what folks can expect.
For sure. Yeah. And also definitely nervous. Like, still, you're making me definitely feel more at ease, and I appreciate it. But I think the nervousness also comes from the weight of the reality of history, the reality of our present moment, and being able to represent that with the honor that is due to the moment, to the history, to the time. So, yeah, I don't take it lightly. So that's where my nerves build up.
Well,
but I appreciate the calmness that you come to me with. But yeah, so on April 26th this year, we are doing what started very much in a commemorative spirit, which is very much what Embrace Boston does, right? We think about the past and we think about our local history in Boston, and we first greet it with honor, right? So there was a level of commemoration to this freedom rally in April, but definitely has shifted very much, and I think has always had a spirit of call to action, right, for the present moment that we're in. So 60 years ago, on April 23rd, 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Led a rally with local civil rights activists, Virgil Wood, Ruth Batson, a number of other amazing civil rights activists from Boston, led a rally, a march from Carter Field, which now is the Carter Playground that we know on Northeastern University, down Columbus through the South End to the Boston Common. And that march became a enormous rally of 20,000 folks, or maybe more. And he really called Boston to action that day. And so what we're doing on April 26th this year to honor that and to also respond to the moment is to gather again on the Boston Common, in between the Embrace Monument and the bandstand, to gather local leaders, national leaders, the people of Boston, the people of Massachusetts, to come together in this moment that we're feeling even more isolated, divided, tired, to come together and both honor the history and double down on what we want the future to look like, for sure.
So when did this idea kind of come into play? Because people may know Embrace for they definitely know us for the what everybody is now calling the Sneaker Gala. So they know us for Embrace MLK honors and the Sneaker Gala. They also know for Embrace Ideas Festival in Juneteenth. When did this idea of commemorating the 60th anniversary of the rally come into place?
Yeah, so I definitely want to shout out our good friend Shamel Idiokitas, also known as Real P, who also has an amazing job and role at Northeastern University, engaging with community. And this was a little bit of a brainchild of his, where he was like, Northeastern has a responsibility to lift this day up. You know, Carter Field is a part of now their legacy too. And so he brought it up, and of course, and embrace, you know, is definitely like, why not? Of course, you know, these are the exact reasons why the monument exists. A number of the folks that are represented, the heroes on the 1965 plaza that surrounds the monument, were a part of this rally, were held the responsibilities and the calls to actions that were being put forth that day through to fruition, right? We're living in a lot of what was called into action that day or was in the works, between education, housing, poverty, racial inequity in Boston. And so it definitely made sense. It made sense that he brought it to us and was like, let's get this done. And so the opportunity, embrace is definitely, when we hear something that makes sense, we're like, why not? We don't know how we're going to do it.
Yes.
We don't always.
The answer usually is yes, and we'll figure it out as we do it.
Exactly. So you already know. Good Trouble is a product of that, yes. Right? So yeah, it was really rooted in that, definitely like a grassroots, just like, let's see how we can move this forward. A number of partners have since kind of answered to the call of making this a reality. A number of universities, colleges, nonprofit organizations have, you know, looked at this opportunity not only as like an important moment to commemorate Boston's history in the fight for racial equity and social justice, but also, you know, definitely to right now, to the feeling of that response to community over chaos.
Yeah, and that concept of community over chaos is, I think, the piece that people really, or at least for me, it really resonated. And it resonated for a couple of reasons. And, you know, I think that in the aftermath of the election, there has definitely been a pull in community to kind of pull back and, you know, for folks who did not vote for the outcome that we got, like, okay, well, we're just going to chill and you tell us how this works out for you. And not in a malicious way, but it's like, hey, you know, to kind of let the chips fall where they may and let other people step up into it. And people have kind of, in a self-care way, have kind of fallen back. But the reason why the rally for me kind of connected was that call of connection and community over chaos, that there has been a situation where sometimes it feels like there is a design to keep everybody off their kilter. So there's always something new and something chaotic coming at you. And then sometimes to survive that chaos, you need other people. You need to be in community. You need to be connected to folks. And, you know, we're lucky enough with situations like Good Trouble to be able to communicate with people and get that information out there to folks and hopefully build that sense of community. But in real life, and, you know, and in connection and real presence, we'll have the opportunity to do that on the 26th to see people. What are some of the aspects of what's going to be going on that day?
Right. So one of the things, there's a few different pieces to, I think, the rally in its entirety, right? And there's like that central experience of gathering at the monument at around 12 o'clock and having a full rally, right? A full presence. We're encouraging folks to create signs using specific language like forward together. Some other language that we've been talking about is, you know, Boston, and then defining it as, you know, the place for human dignity and freedom, right? And so rallying in the spirit of first being in community and being unified across experiences, because I think folks are feeling the fallout of this presidential election, of our new presidency, across all experiences. And so it's definitely a call for folks to come together across that, no matter how they're entering it. So coming to the rally, hearing from folks, hearing from local elected official, local leaders, national leaders as well, and to also be in community through the arts. You know, you know very well, Embrace does not play when it comes to getting people together and experiencing gathering through multi-sensory, right? So you have music, you have young folks performing, singing, you have all of that. So in the rally, I think it's really that moment of listening, learning, affirming, experiencing art together. Hopefully that's healing too, right? I think we believe in that. And then after the rally, there'll be a number of collective action stations that we're calling them. And it's a number of different organizations that do direct service, right? We talk about the 8 harms at Embrace, as you know. We look at in 1965, you know, there was the rally was for education. It was for the poverty that we were seeing across the different segregated neighborhoods of Boston, right? The inequities specifically. And then the housing situation for Black folks, especially in Boston at that time. And things don't feel that different. And so when we think about the other harms, when we think about transportation, access to health, when we think about the arts, what we wanted to do was to create these collective action stations that were available to organizations, nonprofits, universities, colleges that are partners in the work that could directly offer something in that moment to folks that are there. And I think that a lot of times people think that like, oh, I have to have like something super tangible to give to someone. But a lot of times it's like, sign up for this newsletter. You know, like in Embrace Boston, we do an internal research or policy digest, right? But it's just like, so many organizations have things that give people information just through their newsletters, or if a certain university is really trying to tackle how they're working through the backlash of getting rid of affirmative action, you know, and they want to let young people know what they're committing to, you know, like those are things that I think. I went to an event yesterday, actually at Northeastern, and it was really great when we were walking in at the welcome table, they had these cards, English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, and a few other languages that you could just keep in your pocket, that if you're stopped by law enforcement, ICE, anything, someone shows up at your doorstep, you could read literally on the card what your rights are and, you know, refuse to be taken anywhere illegally or have someone enter your home. So there was, on one side of it was just like, know your basic rights, and then the other side of it was kind of like a script that you could read to any type of law enforcement that was trying to, you know, come at you crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that we were talking about those stations and then the art piece of it, the rally. So this is an opportunity for folks to come together, to connect with one another, and to also, I know there's going to be voter registration as well, right?
Yep, there's going to be voter registration. And before the rally actually even starts, one of the things, we're encouraging folks to, you know, rewalk the steps of the march, you know, from Northeastern campus down Columbus through the South End to the Boston Common. We have maps available for folks if people are really interested in retracing those steps that day or another day. It's April vacation week, so it's definitely something to do with the kids and experience that. So, but what we'll do is, you know, if people are doing that, one of the things that we're doing right before the rally starts is at the corner of Boylston and Charles, which is where when they marched that day in 1965, they kind of entered the Common. We're working with the city to rename that corner there the 1965 Freedom Rally Square. Okay. So there'll be a little bit of a presentation of that, an unveiling of that, a moment to really recognize that as like another monument, right? Another monument that doesn't yet exist, but that should, that exists there in spirit, and being able to really like name that physically is a moment that we're going to share with folks right before the rally starts.
Yeah, and for those of you out there that are, as we talk about the rally, I think that there's a couple of key things when I think about the 1960 rally that, 65 rally, that kind of stuck out to me. And for folks who may not be aware of it, if you look at the second episode of the Celtic City documentary series, Bill Russell was actually one of the supporters of the original rally.
Yeah.
And it actually shows pictures of him with Dr. King and on the rally route.
I watched it last night.
Yeah, so those pictures those pictures from the episode are of that day. Mm-hmm. So that original day. And, you know, people don't know that Dr. King's connection to Boston, and, you know, just like they don't know that he met his wife here, and that, you know, some of his early sermons were right here in Boston. Like those things, like he, you know, that day he actually talked about there being a new Boston. These are all pieces that he delivered for us. He was here. I want to say he was here for a couple of days, for like 4 days. Yeah. Because I know he spoke to the Massachusetts, the state house. He spoke at the state house, met with the governor, and then he did the rally as well.
Yep. And he even talks about in that speech that it was very rare for him to get either access or even be welcomed in any like political office space, you know, a governor. He talks about not even having been met by the governor of Alabama at that point in his, you know, in his walk and his journey, and in meeting with the governor of Boston. So yeah, it was a few days. On the 22nd, I think that was the day that they were at the State House, and I think there was even like a school committee meeting.
Yes, he tried to do the school committee meeting, and if I remember correctly, it wouldn't let him in. Because the person that was running the school committee was she was the one who was running and fighting with Ruth Batson and a few other people during that time, so that it was super contentious. I'm about to talk myself into another job, but I think we need to do something at one point or another where we really analyze that trip to Boston for Dr. King and kind of talk about all the things that were going on, because, you know, he was good friends, and when he was here, he was a member of 12th Baptist.
Right.
And, you know, he was good friends with the leadership there, so I know he spent the time there at 12th Baptist as well.
Yeah, and I think the ways in which, like how you mentioned, the relationship between him and Bill Russell, the reception of just him in general in Boston, the fact that, you know, this felt like a place that he could call home in different ways, you know, meeting Coretta here, all of those pieces, and kind of reflecting on what this new Boston idea really meant and what it should be. I think that kind of analysis of where was he? You know, you see a lot of the archival images are my favorite. Like as the visual artist in me who just like can pore over the archival images of not only like the march on that day, but just also him interacting with all of the folks. Who, you know, it wasn't just like this stranger coming in. It was someone that was like, I know what's going on here. I've been knowing what's going on here. My congregation is here too, you know. So yeah, I think going into that a little bit deeper, that might be the next job, the next documentary for Greg.
You see, exactly. I'm about to talk myself into another job. And speaking of jobs, you know, in arts and culture, you lead our arts and culture work over at Embrace Boston. You know, and traditionally on Good Trouble, we have a tendency to dive into the backgrounds of people and kind of talk to them about their journey. What led you to be in that space? Because, you know, you spoke a little bit about being a visual artist and starting in that world, and I don't necessarily know if that was where you're at now is where you intended when you were thinking, like, I'm going to draw pretty pictures for a living. That's going to be the original plan.
Listen, you're going to laugh. I feel like you know this because I feel like in an Embrace meeting, I've had to like share.
You know, there's people listening to this.
No, I know, but I feel like this might also catch you by surprise if you don't remember me saying this.
Okay.
But so I came, arts was definitely like always a love in my life.
From a child?
From child, yeah. My first love was theater. Like, there's an amazing school. I'm originally from Connecticut, so there's an amazing school. They call them magnet schools. I don't know if they call them that anymore, but a school that they built in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, and similar to Boston Arts Academy, how it started here. But the big difference is that it was tuition based, the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts, it was called. And so you would go to your home high school for like your academics from like the morning time, and then you would go to this school for the rest of the day, and you would get intense arts training. Applied to that was like my love. I was going to do it. We were really excited. The tuition was then $3,000 a year, I believe. Got accepted for theater. And that was a barrier for my family. My single mother raising me and my sister, that was a big barrier. We were fortunate to be living in this small suburban town, and my mom advocated for them to pay, to cover that tuition. And they were like, nah. But shout out to my mom for always advocating for me.
She tried.
She sure did. She sure did. She did a lot of things. And so theater, that like was like a wound for me for sure. Like it definitely put a wound in my heart for theater in general. So I shied away from it for a while, just kind of like out of resentment, out of like, well, if you're not going to give me Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts, you're not going to get me anything. Like,
you don't get this art
you're
stuff
here. You're not going to
here.
get any of this. So, as I got older, art was still kind of called me. I got super into like fashion. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was going to go to New York and be a big fashion designer, like single girl in the city. Mass Art actually was the only school not in New York that I applied to. And when it really, really came down to it, I visited Mass Art and I was like, wait, this place is really cool. I didn't know anything about Boston, really. I was like a Connecticut kid who loved New York. Like everything was New York, New York. And I still have love for New York. Shout out to Brooklyn. My godson is being raised by 2 Boston transplants in Brooklyn right now. But Boston, definitely, there was something. I really thought that Mass Art was like this really magical place. It felt something was good there. And so I decided to go to Mass Art, and I was going to do fashion. And then I took an elective my spring semester freshman year in glass blowing. And you couldn't tell me nothing. Again, I was going to be a glass blower. Like, I was like, this is amazing. It's a whole new world. Like,
So long. Wait a minute, bro. Slow down. So when you made... I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing that is such an incredible pivot to go from like, I am going to be Carrie Bradshaw and I am going to live this incredibly fabulous life. It's going to be living single, Sex in the City. This is where I'm going, to just saying that you want to make...
Imagine my mom.
I'm sure that was the conversation.
Mom. So my mother had like, the best the best intentions for me always. And she was like, I'm
fighting for a demon for you to go to art school. You want to make bottles?
Like, literally. And it's expensive. Like, glass blowing as like an art form is so expensive. Like, you have to have like the amount of money that goes into even like having a furnace that heats up to like thousands of degrees, like alone. And then just like the mechanics of all of that and like the tools, the material, like all of it. It's expensive if you don't have, like, I thought I was living in a dream. I was like, I had all this access at Mass Art, beautiful, amazing facilities, great professors, like great community. But I just wasn't, quite living in the reality of like, what does that mean after you get out of here and you don't have this access, you know? I also double majored in art education because education was definitely something that always called me. I always imagined myself being, you know, having my Sex and the City life, my living single life, and then also like being the studious professor, like.
Okay.
So our education, I had the amazing opportunity to intern at Boston Arts Academy. And so Boston Public Schools is where I was able to teach for a while, actually, for like 10 years or so. And I always imagined myself as that being the first step in my education journey. And I always was just looking at the way that art always influenced society, right? I was always like in this artivism space. As I kind of learned and saw that it was time for me to push out of the classroom and not be maybe so student facing all the time, because there were things that I feel like I could definitely influence with my students and their experiences and what they're learning, how they're learning, all of those amazing things, like how the community was embracing that. But there was a lot of changes that I knew I could not do just by being in the classroom, because that is like a double time job being an educator, being a teacher. And so, you know, the exhaustion is real, and kind of pushing for some of the systemic changes that you want is really challenging to do when you have that full workload with students. And so, I ended up going back to school, getting my degree in education policy. And then the pandemic, that was like in the midst of the pandemic, actually. And I was like ready for the pivot right before, we went into shutdown. I was really like applying. I was, a lot of folks were like looking at my resume and being like, I don't really like your face being like, okay, you got glass blowing on here. You got a fine art degree in 3D. You have been an educator and you like are pursuing this policy thing. They're just like, what?
Well, see, this is why you can't go by me, because I looked at that and was like, yeah. Yeah, why not?
It makes sense. So at Embrace, literally Embrace was the one place like that was like, yes, this makes so much sense for what we do, what we believe in, and what we want to do.
Well, there was so many pieces to it, right? So there was the public facing part of it and really connecting on the ground with students and being able to do that. Then understanding the larger scope of kind of the impact on their lives. So the policy piece of it kind of connected. And then there was the through line of multiple disciplines within the art. Like so it does make sense. But I just know that in those small pieces, as you were moving along the line, I could understand your mother's trepidation when you came in and said, "And guess what, Mommy? I want to be a glass blower."
Yes, exactly.
And she was probably like, "Get out of my house and come back when you got some sense." Yep.
She absolutely was. She was like, "I know you don't think I'm like refinancing this home just for your student loans so that you could go blow glass.
So we could go find some place to put a furnace." Mm-mm.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So, that's what got me here for sure. I think that persistence in, art as a language in general has always been a part of me. But what language am I speaking? And it's really about this change that I know has always needed to happen.
So you said something that kind of really, I think, in many ways, kind of encapsulates the embrace approach, which is the artivism, and that the whole idea of using art to kind of advocate and to speak up and to build, like, you know, how much of that is kind of the driving force within the work that you're doing on a regular basis?
It's like 100%. For sure, 100%. And I think the thing that's really hard for people to understand, you know, we talk about symbols and personhood as like one of the harm areas, and we talk about at Embrace, that is the one we really focus on. That's the one we lean all the way in on. And I think that's really hard for people to understand, in the sense of like, when we talk about all the ways in which we experience, in which people in this country, Black folks in this country, have experienced racial oppression, the thing that is the like least tangible for folks, unless you are physically experiencing it, right, is this idea that a community, a group of people were fully convinced that they were worth less than any other human being on the planet, right? And so there was this convincing of anyone outside of this group that was true. And in order to do that, you like strip away this identity, right? And so identity work, I think, is what that symbols and personhood piece is about. And so when we talk about art, that is all identity. And so it's really hard for, I think people struggle with the idea that when we build an activation, when we erect a monument and like fiercely go for making the biggest deals out of renaming a square, you know, renaming a block, putting up a mural. When we fight like furiously for that, it's really about the repair and that deep-seated root, right, of racialized oppression in America towards Black people, towards Black bodies, towards the Black experience. And so I think, yeah, for me, that is how it shows up every single day. It is it's liberation work for me, you know, not only for myself personally, but, you know, for the people around me, for my community, for my family. So yeah, the using the visual arts, using the music, using, and it's not just about using, right? Like we talk about the arts being fluff a lot of times. Not you and I.
Or treated that way.
Yeah, not you and I.
It's treated like parsley. Like you can have dinner without it. You know what I mean? But if it's there, it's nice.
Yes. Because the other, you know, and when we put it in the context of these like boxes of harm areas too, like it's definitely the parsley.
Yeah, but it's not. It's really the main course. And a lot of times I think that's the thing that people miss. Like we're talking about like how people get the impression that they have of Boston, for example. And the thing that I tell people all the time is that no matter what we put in a book, the way that people really get the information about Boston, really a lot of times is through art. Because right now, anybody who's listening to us, anybody who's watching us, if we ask them to describe Brooklyn, they can give us a whole bunch of things about Brooklyn, good, bad, or whatever. Yeah. They can tell us about Bushwick now. They can tell us about Bushwick in the past. They can tell us all the things about Brooklyn. They can tell us
whether they're from Brooklyn or not.
Yeah, exactly. They can tell us 10 things about Brooklyn, 10 people from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And you could tell me things about LA. You could talk to me about Hollywood.
Yeah.
You could tell me about Texas and
Chicago, Philly.
Exactly. Yeah. And where do we get this information from? We get it informed through narrative pieces. We get it informed through art. You know, we know what people from Philly sound like. We know what they, we know what they talk like. We know everything about them. And where is that? And, in Boston, I don't begrudge, Matt and Ben and their movies and everything that they've ever done. I have no problem with that. Yeah. My thing is that can't be the only voice, because if that's the only voice and that's the only view and that's what people hear. So they hear about Bill and they hear about the incredible adversity that he dealt with when he was a Celtic. Right. They hear about them breaking into his home. They hear about them defecating in his bed. Mm-hmm. They hear about all the horrors that he did, and the fact that even it wasn't until later in his life that I even ever started to hear him talk about the positive sides of Boston and the community. So he loved Roxbury and in the community and the people that in community that he was with. But he had said, even in the documentary, he talks about, like, I played for the Celtics. Mm-hmm. In fact, to the point where they changed the uniforms to say Celtics instead of Boston because of that. So, I mean, if that is the information that people are taking in, if they're only seeing Cheers or St. Elsewhere or Ally McBeal, like, this is the view of what in pop culture of what Boston is. Right. And, or you think the only voice that we have is New Kids on the Block. These are all the little bits and pieces of information that have been put out into the world, or the town, or whatever. Like, this is Boston in people's eyes. Then, of course, you don't think that there's this rich Caribbean culture that's been going on here. And the fact that we have, I want to say, one of the oldest carnivals in the country, carnival celebrations in the country, that you don't know that Coretta and Dr. King met here in Boston and started to really gain a lot of the ideas that they would take into their work and that would inform them going into the future from their time being here. You don't know that Malcolm X was here as well. You don't understand, like, his house, the house that he grew up in, still stands on Dale Street in Roxbury to this day. So, I mean, it's super important that people kind of get a different view. And I think that, people ask, what is it that Embrace Boston does? Because they're used to nonprofit organizations that are very service-based, or they're very like direct service-based rather. And I think that people have to start to understand the full ecosystem. Do you find for you that is a part of the work that you end up having to do, is kind of translate that to folks, that this is the entire ecosystem and this is where Embrace fits? Absolutely. Yeah, I think, yes. I think too, because of the way, again, that like parsley idea that you threw out there about the arts, but then also the way in which, because there is this hushed, hidden, literally redlined narrative, right, of what the full breadth of Boston is and has been, it also creates a lot of it creates an energy of competition, especially even in like the art spaces, and I mean, helping in sector. so many spaces, it creates this scarcity mindset of just like, there's only so much space that Boston can allow for like all of this goodness to actually happen in, right? All of this change, all of this push for change, for narrative change, for change across all of these different cultures being recognized in Boston in general, right? Like, what is like Chinatown? You know what I mean? Like, when we think about Faneuil Hall, one of the things that I think about is like, yeah, but nobody ever shows you the image of Faneuil Hall with the breakdancers that have been like had their residency there for decades, is what it feels like. You know what I mean? Like, when I think of my experience, like, that's what I think about. You know what I mean? Like, why is that not the number one image that you see when people say the word Faneuil Hall? You know what I mean? Like, that is the experience that everybody gets when they come to Boston. And so I think that there's like a denial of the identity, right? Which is rooted in denying people of their worth. And
And then there's this mindset of there's just only so much space for one group or another to actually shine, because it's so, because of the push to keep this like very singular narrative going. There's only so much space to say, oh, also New Kids in the Block, and New Edition, you know what I mean? Or any, and, you know? And so in reality, there's so many more people, and there have been so many more people, doing the work, and instead we turn towards each other, and it becomes competitive, when in reality, like, moving forward together as a collective towards this like resistance of, or the scarcity mindset of like, there's actually like this boundary here, there's this barrier here that like, it can't be too much. It can't be too Black. It can't be too Asian. It can't be too queer. You know what I mean? We gotta still maintain the status quo of Ben and Matt. And like, again, like you said, no shade to Ben and Matt, but because Ben and Matt are real. Like,
yeah, but like, exactly. So even there is a value to the stories that they tell,
yes,
and it's interesting, and there is absolutely a value. I'm just saying, and I've always said, I just want to hear the other stories.
Yes,
that's like there's a book, it's an encyclopedia. You just gave me one book.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And when we get those other books, and I think it's interesting, because I think that sometimes, I don't know, it may be actually an outgrowth of that scarcity mentality, that people just think that only one story can be told. But to me, it's like, when I that's part of getting to know people. When I get to know you, to understand your values, understand where you came from, understand the things that got you to where you're at, then I can interact with you differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if I know you grew up in a house where it was really, really quiet, then when you get around me and my family and we're all loud as can be, you're going to be a little bit unnerved. So I got to prepare you before you come over for Thanksgiving dinner. These are the things that I'm talking about. These are the parts where we start to have a sensitivity towards one another. And I don't know where this idea of actually trying to be nice to each other and having empathy is almost seen as, you know, like, people are adversarial to it.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing too is when we also tap into the range of individuals that have been in Boston, or, you know, that we're currently standing on the shoulders of too. It's like the way in that they also expand, and their stories are told in other parts of the country or even the world, right? Like, even I'm Puerto Rican, so some of the stories even coming out of Villa Victoria are like, of
course, this
has been here. Like, how long has this been here? This is like such a deep connection to like this fighting for land and territory, right? Is like a deep story of many, many, many folks in this country. But like, for Puerto Ricans, fighting for your land and your territory is like everything.
It's an ongoing battle.
It's a current battle. You know what I mean?
It's a constant battle.
Even thinking about like when I go to Puerto Rico and when I visit folks, and like the connections that they have to Boston, or when I say somebody's name, or when I talk about Villa Victoria, or when I talk about artists, you know, even muralists right now that are doing work, and they're just like, actually, like, we started in Boston, and now we're like bringing it to PR, and like now there's this beautiful connection between these two places, because there always has been. And I think that's so much the case. I went to see the John Wilson exhibition at the MFA. And the work that he produced while he was living in Mexico too, you know what I mean? Like, these beautiful ways in which so many people from Boston have told the story about Boston in other places, and then brought the stories of other places back to Boston, is a huge part of the narrative that nobody, like, the same with going back to, you know, the Kings, like, even that story of just like how Boston is connected to the rest of this country's history, in terms of like narrative, in terms of people and individual and artists, and change makers. I think when we lose that, we've lost that for so long.
Yes, it's true. And I'm thinking about, like, you talk about people who started who either work here for a short time. There are so many people. We start telling those stories. Like, for example, people don't know that John Legend was here.
I didn't know that.
He went to school here. He went to I want to say BU. Yeah, he went to BU
and Berkeley. Wow.
He actually was working here in finance before he moved to New York and then met Kanye.
That's wild.
And then started his whole career. So he was here in Boston first. There are a lot of people who they come to Boston, hone their craft, or they're come because we're the world's classroom. Everybody comes here, learns, and then goes back out into the world.
True. And then there's so many people who you go out into the world and they're very, very fleeting experience. And maybe it's not a fleeting experience. Maybe they were here for a while. It was school, or they worked back and forth. Like, they're, especially folks of color, they're like terrible experiences of what Boston had to offer them too. And then I take that back.
I take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off, but I take that with a grain of salt. I'm going to tell you why. There's two things that I need to hear from you before I take your I hate Boston speech seriously.
Where did you go?
Number one, where did you go?
Yes.
And if you were in one area, did you ever leave there? Because your critique of Boston, if you were only on Comm Ave and you never left that neighborhood or area, is completely different than what it would be like if you were actually in the real, what I call the rest of the city, the real world. If you're only going up and down Comm Ave and all the way out to Harvard Square, then you can't tell me about Boston. And then the other thing, and this is something I tell anybody who moves to the city, if you are coming into the city of Boston, you need a Boston friend. And I don't mean a friend who is also here in the city.
Yes.
I mean a friend who grew up in the city of Boston.
Yes.
Not someone who is here as you are, because you may be from Albuquerque and they're from Cleveland. No. You need somebody who went to BPS.
Yes. You need a liaison. Yes, I always say this all the time.
You need somebody who grew up in Boston, because you will never, ever experience the real Boston if you don't.
Yeah.
And I kind of, so when I hear people like, oh yeah, Boston this is Boston that, we got everything you just laid out. You just didn't know where to go find it.
Facts. That's it.
That's really all it is. You just were on Comm Ave and didn't want to leave. You were in Harvard Square and didn't want to go nowhere. You were at Emerson and didn't want to leave.
True.
Or you were in Brighton. You moved. You moved. You could have picked anywhere in the city to move, and you moved out to Brighton.
Yeah.
And you think that is the Boston experience? Yeah. No, that is the Brighton experience in Boston.
Yeah.
Which is a piece of what the city is like. But you're not going to get any decent oxtails or messing around over in Brighton.
It's true. It's true. And I think that's also still like the place in which we live in, right? To like the space in which like things are still very segregated. I mean, a lot of cities, a lot of places in this country are. So I can't, say like, oh, Boston is, but it's still that experience. Mm-hmm. It's still that experience, and it's like goes back to that idea of the like scarcity, right? Where it's like we can only do so much of that, whatever y'all are doing over there, mm-hmm. in so many spaces, and we're gonna make sure that it kind of stays there. And so, yeah, I think one of the things that I've heard somebody, when we think about Mayor Wu, testifying in Congress and standing 10 toes down, on. I
was so hyped at home. You would have thought I was watching Smack DVD URL battle. Like I was in my house.
Not SmackDown.
Yes, I was. Oh man, I was so hyped. It was like I was watching Calico and Loaded Lux. It was exactly. I was amped in my house.
It was dope. It was amazing to see her pull up the way that she did. You know what I mean? And also just even before, having to go and testify, I think, being very vocal and saying, this is a place where everybody was an immigrant, and it will remain to be the place where immigrants will be welcomed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think that, that pushback in the idea of who Boston wants to become, you know what I mean? And who Boston also has always been. It's like that pulling up of like what we know Boston has always been, that people are doing, that Mayor Wu is doing. The idea that there's now this like narrative being built from like the national perspective, right? From the president's perspective, but also even like in local perspectives of folks being like, well, we don't like the direction that the city is going in. You know,
what direction when I hear that, it makes me raise an eyebrow, because now I'm like, okay, well, I'm hearing that there are more people getting more opportunities. I'm hearing that there are people we're having a view that we want to take care of everybody and get everyone involved. So did you like it the old way, when it was just one group of people who was kind of reaping all the benefits? Like, what is it that you're nervous about or afraid of?
Yeah.
Or, one of the things I do appreciate about our political conversations in America at this point is that people are just being who they are. So now I can easily identify you. So
yes.
now
yes.
well, we don't have to use any coded language.
No.
You are hanging with the KKK and you're hanging with all the folks. So now I know how we're going to operate. I know how to operate accordingly.
It is giving like we're going backwards too, where it's like, like there was a long period of time where it was like, I'd rather somebody be blatantly like racist to my face, so then I know where you stand, mm-hmm. as opposed to the experience where I'm being like gaslit through mm-hmm. your.
No, it's not like that at all. It's exactly like that.
Yeah, it is exactly like that. We said it once, we said it twice, we're saying it 3 times, now a 4th time. We're here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we're still at it.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, I think that, I also, not that I'm happy about it, don't get me wrong, but what I do appreciate about it is that it also allows people who were kind of on the fence or didn't believe, like, oh, and it is people who are trying to convince you that it's nowhere near as bad as you may think it is. Like, no, it's exactly as bad as I think it is. So let's figure out how to fix this so that we're all able to come and be able to be our whole selves. Because, like, for me, my family is African American, right? So one of the things that I loved growing up was that I grew up in Dorchester and had this diverse community, and I have, some of my friends were Jamaican, some of them were Trinidadian or whatever, and I'm a super fat boy as a kid, so I am touring every kitchen like, oh, what's your mom cook today? And I'm going right on over. So for me,
that is the Boston Black experience.
Yes,
though,
but it's also, it is a way to be in community with people from all around the world, mm-hmm. and knowing that your mom is yelling at you for the same reason my mother is yelling at me. So we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And I think that when you expand beyond that, because a lot of times I hear people say, like, oh, they speak about the experience in their community as a singular experience, and it is. But there is parity many times in a lot of other communities as well, because I know that in my house there's certain stuff that wasn't flying. Just like if I came into my house and it was like, yeah, I want to be a glass blower, that wouldn't have flew either. You know what I'm saying? That was not going to go over.
No, it definitely wasn't.
No, Sheila was not going for that.
Hear about it 2 seconds later, and she was going to call you, and somebody else's auntie was going to call you too.
Exactly. It was going to be a
visit from your uncle 10 minutes later.
Exactly. It was going to be a meeting and all that.
Yes.
Oh, man. So we have had an incredible time talking with you. I'm looking forward to the rally on the 26th. One more time for everybody, tell us more about the rally,
yes.
day, time, and all that, and where people can get more information on it.
Absolutely. So Saturday, April 26th, we will be on the Boston Common. If you're putting it in a GPS, kind of the best way to see where we're at, particularly on the Common, is enter 139 Tremont Street in Boston. That'll get you closest to the monument, and you'll see us there between the monument and the Parkman Bandstand. We'll be out there at 12 p.m., but please come early to witness the renaming of Boylston and Charles Street around 11. embraceboston.org for more information. Our socials, Embrace Boston, all of the good things, all the good places to come get more information, and to also, if you have the capacity, if you have folks, even as an individual, if you want to volunteer that day, we absolutely could use all of the help. This is a real grassroots effort, like putting this together, trying to get as many people together. They got 20,000 people that day, and not that, that might be a little crazy, but for us to have on that day, but as many people as we can get out there. If you are an organization that can provide transportations to young people or to elders, to community members, please definitely get in touch with us. communications@embraceboston.org. We'll see you there.
Yes, and those of you who are not able to be with us, on the Common, we are going to be partnering with our friends here at NBC to be showing pieces of it and delivering that to you as well. So there's a variety of ways that you can be tapped in and be a part of what's going on that day. Absolutely. Elizabeth, thank you so much. See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
No, it wasn't.
See, we got comfortable. We talked about glass blowing and all types of stuff. This is
now the whole world.
Yeah, exactly. Now they know. So if people wanted like the art or whatever, they could come and bug you.
No, I got some good friends that keep the good glass blowing fight going that I'll refer you to. But as for me and my skills,
them tired?
I mean, if somebody wants to lend me studio time for free, I'm in there. Yes.
All right. Well, listen, someone in our Good Trouble Network, hit us up, and we're gonna get Liz back to her passion and what she was doing. Thank you so much. Oh, one last thing before we get out of here. So one of the traditions that we have with Good Trouble is we ask people who is somebody that we should have on the show.
Oh, so many people just came into my mind. Who is someone that we should have on this show? I'm going in the arts direction, of course. I'm going to say two people. Destiny Palmer, shout out, visual artist, abstract painter, muralist. A number of her murals are splattered across Boston and the country. And Nakia Hill. I think you and Nakia Hill would soar. She's also a journalist. Y'all would be here for 3 hours.
All right. Well, then we're going to figure out how we're going to get them on the show. Thank you very much for joining us. This was another episode of Good Trouble. Folks, you know, every show on the internet tells you to do all the same things. So like, subscribe, all that razzmatazz. And make sure you stay tapped in with us and follow us on NBC 10's YouTube channel, because that's where we're at. So you can see our beautiful visage. And what else? That's it, man. I will see you next time on Good Trouble. Thanks for joining us.